Hello and welcome. Today we are going to be talking about slicing helmet files to let them fit on smaller printers for 3D printing. So to do this, we are going to be using a free software called Meshmixer. This is a program by Autodesk. You can just look up Autodesk Meshmixer, and one of the first results should be this link to download the program. Like I said, it's completely free. So go ahead and install that on your computer if you do not already have it installed. Now that you've got Meshmixer downloaded and you've opened up the program, your screen should look almost identical to this. So on the left side here, you have a toolbar. On the center, you have another set of sort of quick functions, some of the most common functions in the program. We are going to primarily be sticking to the edit menu and the import button, which is what we begin with. So once you're open and in Meshmixer, you're going to come over to the import function in the center of the screen or up in the top left corner and click on that, and then find the file that you're looking for and import that into the program. So you can see here, I'm using my Commandalorian helmet. I'm using the main body with the full stripe on it. So with that selected, I'm just going to go ahead and open it into the program. Now, as soon as you import your body into Meshmixer, the first thing that you might notice is it doesn't look as clean as it did in whatever preview you were looking at it in initially or in the listing photos. Don't worry, this is just what it looks like in Meshmixer because Meshmixer uses a reduced amount of topology. So in these renders in the program, it doesn't look as clean, but when you export it out, it's going to be just as pristine as it was initially. So we are going to come over to the menu on the left and use our primary function, the edit button. And in this suite, we are going to come up to plane cut. That is what we're going to use to slice this helmet. So automatically, when I hit plane cut, you see this plane comes in and bisects the helmet. Now this is what we are going to use to cut the helmet up into smaller pieces. And we are going to primarily be cutting it into usually 3 to 4 chunks. I like to do the face of the helmet as one, the back of the helmet as another, and then the dome as its own piece, usually 1 or 2. And the key here is going to be cutting the helmet along areas that already function as noticeable seams. So that could be the raised portion here between the dome and the faceplate. That's going to be a really easy surface to hide a seam line in, as well as that raised line where the back of the ear meets the back of the helmet. So those are usually the 2 cuts that I like to make. Now, looking at the helmet again, you might have noticed that across this plane, the 2 halves of the helmet are different colors. The top half being this lighter gray, and then the bottom half being this translucent white. And that is because up here in the plane cut menu, our cut type is currently listed as cut discard half. We do not want this. Discard half means that that translucent white chunk of the helmet, when we hit accept, that will be deleted. It will literally cut our helmet in half and it will delete one of those halves. We don't want that. We're trying to preserve all of our chunks. So go to that drop-down menu and make sure before every single plane cut you make that you have slice, keep both selected. That's going to preserve both halves but make them separate bodies. So again, no cut discard half. We don't want that. In terms of the fill type down below here, you don't really need to worry about that too much. So before we hit accept, we need to come back over to our model, and you can see this little gizmo in the center of the plane. And with these arrows, we can drag it directionally on the various axes, or we can use these curved symbols on the various planes to rotate the plane itself. And that's what we want to do to cut it along those seams that we're looking for. So I'm clicking here and dragging, and you can see as I rotate, I have that free selection. But if I drag my cursor up, these little dashes appear, and those allow me to snap rotate at 5 degrees apiece. Now, if my cursor is outside of or inside of that circle, it's free rotation. But again, if you hover over those dash marks, you can move at 5 degrees at a time, which makes it really easy to get a clean 90. And once you're at 90 degrees, or whatever rotation you want to be at, You just drag the plane over using one of those arrows. You can see here I'm trying to align it just over where the dome is meeting that raised faceplate. And you can sort of inspect it from both sides. Just eyeball it as best you can. It's not the end of the world because we will have to do some cleanup on the physical prints, but get it pretty close so that you make that finishing work as easy as possible for yourself. And then again, confirming that you're on keep both, you can go ahead and hit accept. Now you've hit accept and it kind of looks like nothing happened. The whole model looks the same. That is because it has been sliced, but it's still registering as one body. So we need to come back to this menu and use the separate shells function. And with our model selected, making sure it's that light gray color, select separate shells. One click on that and you're going to see this menu arise, and that's going to show you all your individual bodies. And now if you click on any particular piece, you can see it's been separated. So along that plane, the face and the dome have now been divided, and they are individual pieces that can be toggled between back and forth. So now doing that same sort of thing, again, clicking on the piece that you want to split. When it's light gray, that means it's selected. Dark gray, I mean it's deselected. So go ahead and click on the faceplate, again, coming up to plane cut within the edit menu. And now here I'm going to rotate 90 degrees on a different plane, coming up to those dashed lines to snap rotate at 5 degrees. And then you can see here, again, we're on discard half. So click on that and make sure one more time we're on keep both, and then use that directional arrow to move the plane over. I'm trying to get it right behind that raised ear slot as best I can. Sometimes these directional arrows will also snap move, and so you can't get it quite there, but just get it as close as possible. We will be able to hide the seam lines regardless, and I have other tutorial videos that will show you what post-processing those looks like, but in general, whenever you can, hide the seam lines. So we've accepted the plane cut here, but again, the face and the back look like they are one complete object. We're going to come over, click separate shells, and then boom, you see now the back is one piece, the face in the front is another separate piece, and the dome is its own piece. So boom, you have 3 pieces right here. And you might notice that the individual pieces of the center stripe that runs over the dome of the helmet are registering as independent bodies themselves. We are going to circle back to that in a minute, but first let me show you what the exporting process for these sliced pieces looks like. So to export a piece, first click on it. Again, you'll know it's selected when it is that light gray color that stands out from the rest of the model. And with that selected, you're going to click export there on the left. I'm just going to name this Commandalorian face. Make sure you know where you're saving it, and make sure that it's saved as an STL. That's like the standard format for 3D printing, so make sure that that's selected, and then go ahead and save it. And so once you hit save, you'll notice that if I come over here to my desktop now and I preview this model, we have just the faceplate selected. So again, Meshmixer is only going to recognize the items, the bodies that you have selected, that light gray color, when you go to export. So in this case, even though the dome and the stripe in the back are in this model, the face was the only one that we had selected, and so it is all that exported. Now, as I mentioned earlier, one thing that's kind of unique about these Mandalorian helmets is you might have noticed that the stripe is registering as a bunch of different pieces. And that's because it's actually a separate body from the dome. I created it so that you can have a stripeless or a striped dome on your Mandalorian helmet and sort of increase the modular capacity of it. So if you just wanted to export the dome, you would just select the dome like I have here and use that same export process, clicking export down in the bottom left and saving it as an STL. However, if you want to export the dome and portions of the stripe as one individual piece, there's one extra step that we need to do. So to export the dome with the stripe, what you're going to do is click on the dome, select it as usual, and then hold your shift key as you also click to select all the other pieces that you want to include. And this applies not just for this, but for any pieces that you want to combine. And once they're selected, come up to this little menu and click Combine. They should change color, and that means that they are now unified as one body. So you can go ahead and export that just as you would any other piece. And when you go ahead and save it, and you go to your desktop, you will notice that we have one perfectly unified dome with the stripe piece. This is an example of another orientation that I was trying. You can see I'm going to the edit menu, plane cut, again rotating to 90 degrees with that snap rotation, but here I'm going to drag the plane a little bit below where the end of the stripe meets the face. That way the entire stripe along the dome will be one solid body. Just another way that you could slice the face, all dependent on where you want those seam lines. Ultimately, this video is just designed to show you how to use the plane cut, separate shell, and export tools. Don't worry about following my placement of the planes to a T. Cut the models up into as many or as few pieces as you need and play around with the placement. As soon as you've got the hang of that, we can move on to how to prepare your prints to get them on the printer, and then we'll go over how to smooth your physical prints and get them painted up. I'll see you in the next video.